On. Let's do it. What do you know, folks? It's the show again, and the show is the Weekly Spinner Rack. Hello, I'm Chris. I'm your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a show where I review the comics that I've read in the past week, and then I will discuss a lot of the comic book news of the week. I'm going to be riffing on that while chatting with you in the live chat room and drawing something at the same time. So a lot of stuff going on. Let's greet some of the folks that are already here, because I'm seeing that we've got some folks in the chat room already. Let's see. Hello to Jim Mahfood, and Jim saying that he's going to be at Emerald City Comic Con. Artist Alley Table Z06. I will definitely try to swing by. I'm going on Saturday. I'm sure I'll catch you. Hello to Johnny Slider and Cup Creations. Oh, thank you. Yes, my thumbnails are very silly for these. Hello, Shane, Ricky Prickles. There's my sister Jean. Hello. This is so nice. I see A-Man and Moritaka. Those are names I've seen before. Dave Wright. No. Finn. James Stewart. Trey Mooring Meat? I'm guessing on that one. Ryan says, finally made it to the live stream. Washington represent. Oh, okay. Fellow Evergreen State resident. Nice. Hello, Zoe. Hello, Rostown. Hello to Big Gay Dave. Jorge Alvarez. Captain Action. Aaron Robles. Wow. I know I missed a couple names. Sorry, they're flying by. Love that so many of you made it here. Let's see, we've also got Joe Dent, Matt Edwards, Jason Brownwell, Matt Rubin. I got to get going with the show, otherwise I'll just be listing names all day. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a good time today, because there's a lot of really interesting news, in my opinion, and while I don't have tons of comics to review, I think it was a pretty strong week. I'd definitely be curious to hear what your favorite comic that you came across this week was. And just a reminder, because it's still pretty new, I now have a P.O. box. So, if you want to send, say, a comic or something like that that you've made, you now have a place where you can send that. I'm not asking you to, lots of people have proactively asked me, where can I send something? Or sometimes people are even like, hey, if I send you this comic book run that I really liked, would you consider reviewing it? And I'm like, I can't promise anything, but of course, if I read it, then maybe, I have to read it before I could even potentially do a review. So if you want to do something like that, here we go. Comic Tropes, P.O. Box 58334. That's in Kent, Washington, zip code 98064, United States of America. All right. Let's move on. Oh, and I'll also mention, well, first let me acknowledge this. Steve Sorensen with a super chat. I'll always interrupt to acknowledge a super chat. And the super chat says, my dog heard your voice, got up, and laid on his Monday spot. I love it. That's so great. Do I ever think I'll bring back channel fan art? You know what? Just to be clear, I always check my email inbox each week to see if there's any fan art, and I share whatever gets sent there. So that's the comictropes@gmail.com email for both this channel and my main channel, Comic Tropes. If there's fan art, I'll show it. I think that it was more popular for a while because originally I had a much smaller audience and I was doing everything I could to interact with my viewers, including sharing their fan art, and then potentially one of them would win a gachapon prize. That became a lot of work and a lot of expense, honestly, to constantly be mailing something out every week. I really didn't have much interest in continuing to be buying those prizes and mailing them out, but I'm still super happy to share fan art. But I think that those prizes must have motivated people. I don't know. So anyway, still happy to share that stuff on Comic Tropes every week. I'm going to get an avalanche of fan art. Well, who knows? We'll see. Is that Genie pregnant on the cover? Well, let's talk about that. So, the one thing I wanted to mention before I get into the reviews of the comics that we've got this week, I was a day late getting my latest Comic Tropes episode up. I've got another channel, if you don't watch that, it's called Comic Tropes, where I do edited videos Usually it's an analysis of a technique or a piece of comic book history, something like that. This week, I charted some of the evolution of the character She-Hulk across 3 important runs by different creators. Sort of how she changed, was sort of created for very commercial reasons, but became a pretty beloved character in my opinion. So anyway, that's up as of this morning on Comic Tropes, so I hope you'll consider checking that out. The gumball machine, I still have it, but it was a real hassle to fill it up and to mail stuff out, so yeah. Anyway, let's get into some comic book reviews, and I'm going to start with one that's become one of my favorites these days because it's just so different, and I don't know where it's going, and when you're reading a comic book or any sort of story, I think that's exciting when you can't really predict exactly where something's going. The title 8 Billion Genies is by writer Charles Soule and artist Ryan Browne. They've done books together before, like Curse Words. This is an Image comic, issue 4 of 8, and the premise is everybody on Earth gets a genie at the exact same time and can make a wish. This deals with this sort of time period of about the first 8 weeks or so of the world dealing with that. There's lots of people that have become superheroes and supervillains. Sorry, let me get that into camera frame a little better. And we follow mostly a small group of people in a bar, and the guy that runs the bar made a wish that the people in there don't get affected by wishes made outside of the bar. So they're sort of like, what would I call it? Survivalists almost, or something like that, like doomsday preppers. They're just bunkering down while the world outside goes completely nutty. It's fascinating to see all these wishes conflict and all the crazy things that are happening. There's one little kid asked for superpowers so that he could find a safe place for his parents to live with him in all this madness. But he just ends up getting into all these weird super battle fights, and he's just a kid, but people are killing each other. It's nuts. And there's a huge twist with one of the characters in this. There's a lot of discussion on the nature of a wish and how it impacts each other, and sort of what people wish for initially versus what they wish for later after they've had some time to think about it. It's really interesting. I love it. It's a really crazy world. Look, this superhero kid flies out, and this is the planet these days. There's nuclear bombs going off. Parts of the country or continent are getting warped. It's a sentient person. It's just a really silly world. It's full of spaceships out here. Star Wars and Star Trek type stuff. Folks, if you're not reading it, this book is crazy, but it's a lot of fun to daydream about what you would do in a situation like that. Yeah. So, anyway, I definitely recommend it. I'm having a lot of fun with that one. So, after many months of delays, Marvel finally has its Predator book coming out because, of course, Disney bought 20th Century Fox, which came with a lot of assets, a lot of the movies that 20th Century Fox has made, including Predator, including Alien. The Alien books started coming out through Marvel Comics with no real problem. Predator was about to, and it got delayed because there was a lawsuit going on behind the scenes. The guys that wrote the first movie were trying to sort of assert that they should regain the rights to it. It was all settled out of court, but it took several months, and the Predator book was quite delayed, but it's finally out. Marvel, and by the way, this cover is really nice. That's by Leno Francis Yu, not the interior artist, but really cool cover of the Yautja. Hey, we're all nerds here, right? That's the name of the alien species, the Yautja. And it does something a little bit different. Oh, by the way, smart. Big ad here for Prey, which I talked about last week. Great movie. Great movie in the Predator franchise. Set in the 1700s. Comanche tribe of Indians going up against a predator. What's that, like 400 years, 300 years ago? Anyway. The difference on this one is that there's somebody hunting the predators. This is set in the near future. And this young woman's family was all killed by a particular predator. She has grown up just becoming a better and better hunter, using their armor and weapons and stuff like that to track down what happened, to her family, to find the specific predator alien that killed her family. So it's flipping things on its head a little bit. We're following the hunter, and the hunter is a human, and the human is hunting the alien species. If I show too much, it would probably spoil some of the story. But, yeah, maybe that's not necessarily what I would want to see as a movie, but at least it's a new, original type of story within Predator that I haven't seen yet. So, I'm having fun with it. Aw, thank you for the super chat, Chi-Chi. Let's see. Hope you're well. I'm pretty good. Have you heard of an Image comic called Gunning for Hits? It's a cool premise, but I can't decide if I should invest. I don't know Gunning for Hits. I don't know who made it. Gunning for Hits. I do appreciate that Image has a very broad spectrum of the type of comics that they will publish. I do appreciate that. Oh, and No in the chat room mentioned something that I was also going to plug. One of my fellow comic tubers, a guy named Matt Draper. I really respect Matt. I think he's got some really, what would I want to say about his essays? They're not just well researched. Matt Draper has a really good way with words and just sort of crafting his opinions without necessarily just recapping and spoiling things. I really respect him, and I think he's also a really good editor. So if you haven't watched Matt's channel, he does do comic book reviews, but he also tends to do more and more movie type reviews. And he did a really cool retrospective of all 7 Predator movies and then ranks them. And I pretty much agree with his ranking. I think most people would probably, honestly, coming up. The thing about Predator, I do think that there's a pretty clear ranking for them, more or less. Or at least one that... Because there's like 3 really good ones. There's a couple that are just sort of like goofy fun. And then there's like... Well, at least... No, there's like 2 that are just outright really bad. So I think that like everybody kind of agrees. But anyway, Matt Draper has a really interesting essay about Predator. The movie series. But I do like this. It depends on how into the Predator you are, I guess. I don't know if this would make a new fan of the Predator, but if you like the Predator and you want to see something a little different with it, so far this is giving it to me. Hopefully that review helps. Who am I waiting for the Predator to make a crossover with? That's a great point. Like, I don't know if I'd want that to take place in the main Marvel continuity, but Predator versus Batman, there are like some really good Predator Batman comics out there. And it would be cool to see like Predator go up against the Punisher or Predator against Daredevil. That would be interesting. Kind of street level heroes, I'm thinking. But you could do cosmic stuff with Predator or Alien too. Like, sort of out of continuity. I think it would be cool to see Predator and Alien up against the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that would be a blast. So anyway, either of them would work really well with that. But I think Predator, honestly, would work better than Alien with the superhero stuff. Predator versus Paste Pop Pete. Andrew Jefferson, I like you. I like the way you think. Yes, I did get my hair cut. Predator versus Conan, except Marvel just lost the rights to Conan, so yeah. Predator versus Kraven. There you go. I mean, like, they probably have to, like, for marketing purposes, couch it as, like, Predator versus Spider-Man. Spider-Man's in there, but maybe it's more about, like, oh, how about Kraven and a Predator are both deciding to hunt Spider-Man? So he's being hunted by both of them. That would be fun. And then, of course, Kraven would decide to go after a Predator. Maybe even team up with Spider-Man. I don't know. Predator and Wolverine because of sales. Yeah, I feel like realistically, Wolverine would make short work of a Predator. So certain superheroes would, certain like if a Predator went up against Captain Marvel or Thor, I don't think the Predator's going to win. Yeah, Paste Pop Pete was the original name of a supervillain in Marvel Comics, and he quickly changed it to Trapster. But I'm giving very serious thought. I think my mind's more than 90% made up. I'm going to cosplay as Paste Pot Pete for New York Comic Con this year. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to do that. As long as I can actually make the costume, I'm going to go as Paste Pot Pete. No one will know who I am, but I will know, and I think it's hilarious. Punisher. So I've talked about this on like over the last few months on this show. Punisher is a comic that I don't generally follow too much these days. Unless they kind of do something unique and interesting with him. And that's what they're doing here. Jason Aaron has a take that I haven't really seen before. We got a little bit of an idea like this once. Daredevil once took over the ninja group, the Hand. They're evil. And he became a little corrupted by their sort of dark god, the Beast. Well, now that's happening for Punisher. And the reason the Punisher would even entertain that idea is they've brought his wife back to life. And it's canonically been established in the past that the Hand can bring the dead back to life. Now, since they're bad guys, that doesn't usually feel like a cheat or something that a good guy could easily just like get a loved one back. But it's happening in this, and it's all about like what price the Punisher is going to be willing to pay. And in this one, he finally is like, nah, the Hand is too evil. And he tries to escape with Maria. But they haven't finished the full resurrection spell or ceremony or whatever, and he realizes he cannot like leave their compound with her. It also gives us a lot of his background as a teenager, and you realize that like Frank was on a really dark path at a young age, but a friend, a nerdy friend, really helped save him and started that relationship that he had with Maria. So we're finally sort of getting to know Punisher's dead wife, who was basically dead before the series ever started, So it's a character we don't know that well, and we don't know their relationship that well. So it really is fleshing out Punisher in a way that we haven't gotten to see before, and I think that matters. I think it's a cool story. I think it's got good art. I don't think it'll last forever, like the Punisher leading evil ninjas. It's not going to last. You can tell, like, from day one, you could tell that this was not going to last. But it's going in some interesting directions. I want to mention one other thing, which is, I don't know why I noticed it this week of all weeks. Each of the publishers are using a different type of paper. So, like, Image has, like, a fairly glossy paper here. You probably see a little reflection. But it's fairly thick, okay? The Marvel books also have glossy interior pages, but it's actually very, very thin. Very thin, and it like sort of can catch on your fingers a little more easily. I worry about like almost like tearing or smudging the Marvel pages, and then you get to like a DC comic, and it's not really a glossy paper. Actually, it's like a matte paper. It's also fairly thick. So I didn't even realize that until this week. But like they're all using very different internal paper. Andrew Jefferson, thank you for the super chat. Floppy hat and bucket of glue and everything. That is my plan. I want to go as an accurate Paste Pot Pete from like 1962 or whatever. The Hand was the inspiration of the Foot Clan in Ninja Turtles. Yes, well, actually a lot of stuff from Daredevil at the time was an inspiration. I mean, Frank Miller was doing a killer run, so he was using the Hand, and Ninja Turtles had the foot. Their origin is that like Matt Murdock knocks somebody out of the way of getting hit with like radioactive waste, and then that falls into the sewer and creates the turtles. Daredevil was mentored by Stick, so the Ninja Turtles were mentored by Splinter. So yes, it was that first issue had a lot of parody elements of Daredevil. A lot. You prefer the matte paper? I think I do too. Yeah. I haven't been loving the thin glossy paper in the Marvel Deluxe editions. There's something about this paper. It's not bad, but I do feel like my thumb is going to smudge it if I'm not careful, because it just feels sort of like thinner. I don't know. It looks good. The print quality is good. Colors are popping. Fine lines are represented. It's not muddy. So the printing quality is fine, but I just sort of worry that like I'm going to like ruin it if I'm like reading it, say, on my couch or something like that, and I'm holding the whole book instead of like, laying it down and turning it page by page. I worry that I'm going to like, damage a page a little bit. Well, let me try to wrap up some reviews. This is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 7, written by Zeb Wells, illustrated by John Romita Jr., sort of following up from last month's huge anniversary issue where Spider-Man temporarily teamed up with the Sinister Six. This follows one of those members, Vulture. His granddaughter realizes that he's like, a horrible person. I don't know how he kept it secret or whatever. And he goes after Peter for revenge. Meanwhile, there's some history here I don't follow. I don't get it. But Norman Osborn, who's usually the Green Goblin, one of his arch enemies, has somehow, I guess, like, he's sane now and somehow been redeemed. I don't know how any of that happened. So he's trying to do right by Peter Parker, offering him a job. There's a cute little cameo here where he bumps into Kamala Khan, who's interning at Osborn's new company. That's okay. And there's some awkward meeting with Mary Jane, who was, Norman thought he was being nice by inviting her over, but Mary Jane's in a relationship, and anyway, there's a lot of, like, subplot drama here that I don't understand, because I guess I haven't been reading it long enough. There's one cool thing, though, like, Norman is also trying to make things right for Peter he's made some sort of upgraded tech suit. Alright, that's cool. I'm curious where that goes. I hope it doesn't devolve into just like, another Green Goblin story. We'll see. The art is good. John Romita Jr., even if he's working fast, I think does really well. Here's an innovative panel layout. You have to flip it this way. And I think that this is some good storytelling. This is an example of when I say that John Romita Jr. is good at storytelling. It's a choice like this, to flip it this way, because the Vulture can fly. So his biggest advantage is that he can, like, take Spider-Man up high where his webs and stuff aren't going to work. This sort of gets that height across in a way that, like, I don't think having it this way would do the same, would have the same impact. I really respect that. It's a good choice. It's a really good choice. Why would Peter be friends with the greatest foe who slept with the love of his life? That's the thing. You can't, like, always think about every aspect of comic book continuity, because it'll never hang together perfectly. It's just too many different writers. It just... You can't do that. Like, you can just sort of lightly acknowledge that things have happened, but you can't, like, think about it too hard. It never makes sense, ever. It ends with a good cliffhanger. Vulture smashes his web slingers and drops Spider-Man from, like, higher than the New York City buildings. I don't know how he's going to survive that. That's a decent end to an issue. So it's fine. I would say that the subplot, like, soap opera drama stuff, just feels like you need to know more of Spider-Man's history than I feel like I know right now. So I don't love that. Okay, so somebody else is explaining what was in this book. Spider-S says, the resurrected Sin Eater, who killed Jean DeWolf, that was back in like the 80s, cleansed Norman Osborn from his evil that was in him from selling his soul and son to Mephisto. Oh, and also Nick Spencer did retcon the Gwen Stacy, Norman Osborn sleeping together. That now did not happen. I hear it was a really clumsy, overly wordy way to get around it, but that was a terrible story idea. It's good that that's in the past. It's not canon anymore. I just realized that Zeb Wells and Jim Zub are different people. Very different writers, in my opinion. Yeah. Very different writers. Moving on, I'm following some of the Marvel and DC event comics for the summer. I'm reading Dark Crisis and I'm reading Judgment Day, which involves the Avengers, X-Men, and Eternals. Folks, this stuff's really deep in the weeds. The artwork's good. What's the artist's name? Valerio Schiti. The artwork's good. The dialogue is not bad. But the overall premise, I just feel, is very convoluted. 3 different teams, like, at each other's necks. I don't know. Mostly the Avengers and the X-Men are actually allies right now. And there's a few Eternals that are trying to kill the X-Men. Some other Eternals that are still good, I guess you'd say, are working with the Avengers to reanimate the corpse of one of the Eternals' gods, which is a Celestial. That's some really crazy next level stuff. But yeah, so like Arishem, the judge, he was the main Celestial in the last Eternals movie, for whatever it's worth, and he's one of the more notable ones. Anyway, he's been revived, and he's going to judge the entire planet based on, like, if people are more wicked than good. So I don't know. Whatever. I have nothing to say about that. That's just a mess. It's a mess. Is Peter Parker still Aunt May's illegitimate child? Captain Action, if you're talking about the book Trouble by Mark Miller, I want to say, I don't believe that was ever canon. That was always meant to just sort of be like a what-if type story. So no. Yeah, Aunt May is definitely still alive in the comics. She was brought back not too long after she had died. She's been around a long time. Last book I read, folks. Picked up Superman, Son of Kal-El, because generally this has been a pretty fun book. In fact, I think that Tom Taylor, out of like the writers at DC, is one of my favorites. The stuff he's doing with Nightwing and with this, it's pretty fun. It doesn't seem like it's stuff where you have to know lots of continuity or read crossovers. You can just read the book and have like a good adventure, and I like that. The main bad guy in this book is a guy named Bendix, who runs this small island nation called Gamora, and he enslaves and mind controls superhumans. That's how his country is so successful. In this issue, Superman, who is, by the way, the son of Kal-El, he teams up with his new boyfriend and a bunch of other superhumans to and Robin to break into this country and try to free everybody from the mind control. And yeah, it's just a cool adventure. Look at the art. That's pretty exciting, right? I think that looks cool. I think it's good. Oh yeah, Black Phoenix is mentioning Trouble, Marvel, and Ultimate Adventures all coming out around the same time. Boy, some really not great books. All right. So, I'm going to try to draw. I've laid it out. I'm going to try to like flesh this out with some inks and stuff. This is going to be Naru from the new movie Prey versus like a predator that's sort of coming out of invisibility here. So, we'll see if I can pull this off. But I'm going to be like sort of inking this while simultaneously discussing with all of you guys the news of the week, of which there is a lot of really interesting news. In fact, why don't I start with the one that's on everybody's minds, the biggest comic book news of the week. Jack in the Box, yes, the hamburger chain of restaurants, fast food place Jack in the Box, has released a comic book. A comic book all about actor Mark Hamill's life working at Jack in the Box before he became a famous actor as Luke Skywalker. And that actually is the truth. So yeah, Jack in the Box made a comic book about Mark Hamill's life working for them and how he got let go. And if you are interested in reading it, I ordered one. You can go to the Jack in the Box online store, which I'm going to guess at this, but I'm pretty sure it was shopjackinthebox.com. And for 100% free, you can have that comic book physically delivered to you. So we'll see what that's like. But I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, there's a Jack in the Box comic out there. Let's see. Panels with Pete with a super chat saying, love your channel and positive... Whoops, hold on. I gotta scroll up a little. In your positive perspective, thank you. As a YouTube curious bookstagrammer, I'd love advice for starting to make videos. Thanks. I'll come back to talking a little bit more about Jack in the Box in just a second, because I do have a little bit more to say about that comic. But to answer your question, I appreciate the super chat. I think that one of the things you can do for yourself is consistency. Decide on what kind of a schedule, whether that's, like weekly or monthly or whatever it is, and find a way that you can stick to it. It's going to take a little while, but, you will build up a fan base if you are consistent and talk about stuff that you are passionate about, because that passion will shine through. And I guarantee there's going to be other people out there that are as passionate about what you're passionate about. You just have to be patient with that. But yeah, so those are my two pieces of advice: consistency and passion. Okay. But if you haven't heard, Mark Hamill did talk about this like about 2 or 3 years ago when he was a guest on Jimmy Kimmel. He said that, like, yeah, his first real job was, working at Jack in the Box in LA, like cooking burgers, manning the fry machine. And what he really wanted to do was work the window, like take the orders from the drive-thru. He said that just sounded more exciting and fun. And when he finally got the opportunity, he decided that what would be a good idea would be to do it in character as the clown that is the Jack in the Box mascot. And his manager did not like that, and that's why he got fired. He had one opportunity to work the the drive-thru, Mark Hamill did, and he got fired. And so now they've made a comic book, I guess, about that. And you can get it for literally free. There's both a digital version or a physical version. I'm sure they don't have tons of copies of the physical version. I ordered one. Like I say, like even shipping is free. They don't ask for anything. So yeah. Will the Jack in the Box promotional comic make it in a future Comic Tropes episode? It depends on the quality, I guess. It depends on the quality. I just ordered that comic, looking forward to your review of it. Yeah, exactly. So I found that pretty funny. Jack in the Box making a comic book. But let's there's some real news. Actually, I've got a lot of news, just to be clear. So let's get into that. We talked about this a little last week, and actually we had a little fun talking about this last week because I was making a mistake while I was talking about it. I was talking about the future of Valiant comics, and I apparently during the show I kept saying Vertigo comics. I kept like making the same mistake and just saying Vertigo over and over for a while until I realized. But Valiant Comics is cutting way back on what they're doing. They're cutting down to just a single title a month. Hey, better than going out of business, I guess. It was a surprise to see that was sort of real. The comic that they had going right now was an Archer and Armstrong character. They've got a lot of superheroes. They were doing an Archer and Armstrong. It was supposed to be at least 6 issues. They'd solicited out to 6, but issue 4 is going to be the last one for that. So that one's just canceled. And what will instead come out is a new Bloodshot book. Sort of a Bloodshot reboot, I guess. And Yeah, it's called Bloodshot Unleashed, and that's gonna be a 4-issue series starting next month, September. And that's the only book they'll release for the month. After the 4 issues of Bloodshot end, they're gonna bring back sort of an anthology crossover book they have called Book of Shadows for like 3 or 4 issues, starting in January, and then in March they're going to have a... What book is that one again? It's their other big character, Exo Manowar. And that's called Exo Manowar Unleashed. And that one actually has some interesting talent on it. Becky Cloonan and Liam Sharp. So that actually does sound a little interesting to me. But yeah, so cutting way back on what they're doing. I guess just a cost-cutting measure to help stay relevant. The pandemic's been hard on certain publishers. Some publishers are doing great. Manga's doing great. Trade paperbacks are doing great. Digital comics, like on sites like Webtoon, are doing great. Like, just killing it. But some other publishers are having tough times, and apparently Valiant is one of them. So I'm curious to see where it goes, because I do like those characters, although I'm not I can't say that I followed every run. Let's see, Panels with Pete saying, I had a lot of fun with Valiant's post-2012 series for a few years, but they really need strong leadership to get back on track. EXO's creative team is promising, but I'm not optimistic. No Ninjak comic right now, although Ninjak could appear in that Book of Shadows, I suppose. So we'll see. Anyway, I think most people here at least have heard of Valiant, if not read their books. Hey, in the 90s, I was reading Valiant like everybody else. For a little while there, Valiant was the hot thing along with Image Comics. And I think that their fatal misstep was thinking that their characters were more important than the direction. And I think that they really actually did make a mistake by letting Jim Shooter go. But that's hindsight, right? But they've been bought and sold by different places. They've come back, and they've been doing pretty well for quite a while, but not the last couple of years. Yeah. Never been to a Jack in the Box, but just ordered the comic. Hey, I'm glad some of you folks are ordering it, because, hey, it's completely free, so why not, right? If they're going to even mail it to you for free, yeah. They won't mail it, I think, to, a P.O. box, so there might be some limitations, and therefore there's, a digital version. But I ordered one to come here. We'll see. Yeah, they pushed him out. The kayfabe guys are really harsh to Valiant. Well, I understand. I love the kayfabe guys. I do. I think that they're great, and they have a good point that sometimes the Valiant books did not always look pretty in the early days. They had some good artists, and they had some that just weren't good, and the coloring was always just sort of muddy browns and oranges. It seemed, it wasn't a very vibrant looking superhero line. But I think that they had some interesting characters. Some of them are a little dated now, but, I think that, Bloodshot, Exo Manowar, Archer and Armstrong, they all have potential. Yeah. It's a tough call. It wasn't for everybody, but I thought that they, had some good writers, and they did have a few really good artists, just to be clear. I don't think there was anything bad about Bob Layton at that time. He was pretty good. But they had a couple of guys that were great, because they did get Barry Windsor Smith for a while. I mean, Barry Windsor Smith has always been excellent from day one. So he was awesome. And then they had David Lapham. That was the first place he ever worked, and you could see him growing fast. His skills grew really, really quickly. So his stuff on Harbinger was good. Harbinger. Anyway, that's a very different Valiant than the one that's out now and has been out for a while. But yeah, it's an interesting. That would make an interesting episode, wouldn't it? To talk about like Valiant's history, its ups and downs. It's been a turbulent company in some ways. Yeah. Have you thought about making a Comic Tropes episode on the origin of Shonen Jump? Boy, that's a big one. I haven't thought about it. It's not a bad idea, but there's a lot to that, and it would be very... The trick would be getting good images of the early stuff. That would be the biggest trick. The creators and the comics from those early days. That would be tricky. I feel like Barry Windsor Smith didn't do actual inside pages. He mostly did covers, right? No, he did interiors too. What was his main book? He did a couple. He did one about like Rune. I want to say he started doing the interiors on Rune. And he did do a lot of covers for them, though. Yeah, he did do a lot of covers. They did make a Magnus Robot Fighter comic, but just to be clear, Victor, in addition to some original characters, Valiant licensed several known characters and from Gold Key, which was a company in like more the Silver Age. Yeah, so some of the characters like Magnus Robot Fighter, Solar Man of the Atom, what else did they license? Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. There's probably another that I'm not thinking of, but they licensed some characters that they put into their comics just to sort of have some brand recognition like right off day one, since they weren't starting with like a huge stable of superstar artists and writers. Rune was Malibu Ultraverse. Sorry, you're right. Rune was that. You're right. Yeah, that was Ultraverse. Which was not too long after Valiant, but I can't remember. I thought he did interiors on a book, but it's been too long. I'd have to look it up. Magnus probably did have a recent run. Some of those licensed things have been at other places. Okay, Andy says, you're telling me it isn't pronounced Hugs and Kisses, Man of War? I'm not saying that it's not pronounced that way. Barry Windsor Smith did do Exo Man of War and Archer and Armstrong. Thanks for looking that up, Steve. Steve Vendetta points that out. That sounds right. I got the first Batman vs. Predator by Dave Gibbons, Adam, and Andy Kubert today. Also, a few days ago, I went to LA and went to the comic book stores for my birthday, like you, and got The Last Ronin. That sounds like fun, Iron Shell. Yeah, about a year ago today, a little over a year, I was down in LA checking out their comic stores. They've got a lot. They've got a lot of really interesting ones. Next weekend, I'm going to a comic convention, a decent-sized one, Emerald City Comic Con here in, what do you call it? Where do I live? Seattle. And, hopefully I get to see a few interesting people there. That would be nice. I know Sal from Comic Pop is coming for a single day, but he's coming on, just a Thursday. So I might see him, but it all depends on more his schedule. But I might see Sal. So we'll see. He's a nice gentleman. Let's move on and talk about more news, though. There's lots. So I don't think the Bloodshot movie did well at all. Well, you know what? That's a great point. Before I move on, let me address this about Valiant Comics. I think if there was no pandemic, I think that there's a chance that Bloodshot movie could have done fairly well. I did see it, but it came out right when everything got locked down. And there's no question that absolutely hurt the box office a lot. It just did. There was no way around it. They released it just before everything went to hell. I saw it and I thought it was decent. I did. I thought that the Bloodshot movie was kind of fun. It wasn't perfect or anything, but it was better than something like Morbius. So I honestly think if it wasn't for the pandemic, Bloodshot might have done a lot better. Might have. And if it did, that might have brought some more attention and hopefully some money to Valiant at a time when they probably need it. Instead, they probably took a big hit just as the pandemic started. Probably. You think Bloodshot was pretty bad, Captain Action? That's fair. It's probably not for everybody. I thought that, like, the... yeah, I don't know. Like, that one fight scene where he's in the car tunnel, like, fighting a bunch of assassins, and I think that there's, like red flares and smoke lighting everything. I thought that looked pretty cool. I don't know. A Bloodshot versus the Valiant Universe movie on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's the one you're thinking of, but they did do an unofficial, like, YouTube thing where they hired one of those guys that played a Power Ranger to be Bloodshot, but it was, like, mostly about Ninjak. I don't know if that's the same thing or something else. Anyway. You like the shorts about... Let's see. Replace the vowel in Bloodshot for a bad time. Yeah, well. Alright, now I will move on to more news. We've said everything we can about Valiant. No more Valiant discussion, folks. None. There's no more opinions that can be shared. We shared all the opinions. I'm just kidding around. I just found this one interesting more for, like, the behind-the-scenes story. But Marvel announced an upcoming miniseries with the supervillain they have called Arcade, which has been used in a couple good stories over the years. Arcade has. It's going to be written by Jim Zub and Ray Fox. It's called Avengers Murderworld. It's going to be a 5-issue series. Now, here's what I think is the cool thing about it. Is Jim Zub posted that he actually pitched this to Marvel something like 10 years ago when he was just starting out. And they were like, no, thank you. And then, like, you know, he's got a little more clout and cachet now. So I guess he pitched it again. And they were like, sure, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And he said, this is why you should never tell people your unaccepted ideas, because you never know when they might get, like, accepted later on. And I thought that was pretty interesting to hear. So anyway, and it's gonna, like, involve Arcade abducting some superheroes again and putting them in, you know, his death traps, his games. But it's going to imply that, like, Murderworld has been much bigger than we've ever thought that it was, and nobody has properly investigated it. And he's, like, doing this stuff, like, online, killing, like, hundreds of regular people all the time. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. So that's something coming out in, like, September. Avengers Murderworld. But I mostly thought that the interesting thing about it was Jim talking about how he'd pitched it so long ago and that it's only just now, like, sort of been accepted. So I like that. What about Shadow Man? How do people still hire Arcade? Has he ever killed a Marvel hero? Actually, yes, Victor. He's killed quite a few. There was this one really cool series that was very much patterned off of the Japanese book, manga, and movie called Battle Royale. It was called... It might have been called... It wasn't called Avengers Academy, but it was called something along those lines. I can't remember the exact title right now, but it was like a 12-issue series where Arcade abducted, you know, like 20-something teen superheroes. And they killed off a lot of them. A lot of them. It was pretty... Yeah, it really upped the stakes for the for who Arcade is. It was cool. Yeah, he's definitely killed people. Like actual characters and stuff. I heard Morbius and She-Hulk have a team-up in the miniseries. I don't know if I believe you there. Avengers Arena! You didn't like it, Black Phoenix? I liked it. I liked it a lot. Even the covers were designed to sort of like remind you of, what do you call it, Battle Royale. Has everybody seen Battle Royale? Even if you haven't seen Battle Royale, you've seen Battle Royale, because Battle Royale is stuff like the Hunger Games and Squid Game and stuff like that. I mean, yeah. I always thought Arcade was a fun villain, not much depth from what I've read, though. Yeah, it depends on which story you're reading, I guess. Maybe. Yeah. I just ordered 10 of the Jack in the Box comics. Oh no, you're cornering the market! Battle Royale is a great movie. I liked it. I thought it was pretty badass and disturbing. I thought it was, but what do I know? Battle Royale is better than the Hunger Games by far. Well, I agree. I agree. I think it's a pretty cool movie. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. The Battle Royale manga is great. I read that one too. I read the book. I saw the movie. I read the manga. I wanted to see, like, yeah, the different versions. And I thought it was pretty cool. Let's see. Doesn't Arcade look like Alfred E. Newman, but with John Travolta's white Saturday night suit? Something like that, yeah. What else do we have for news? There's a British publisher called Eaglemoss. And while they've published some sort of comic book stuff, mostly what they're known for is they would publish magazines that they would license and include a lead figurine. They've done that with tons, like hundreds of Marvel and DC characters, Doctor Who, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, what else? Star Trek. I somewhere like do have hundreds of those Eaglemoss Marvel figurines. For a while, I was really into those. I really, really liked them. Unfortunately, it looks like they are going to be going out of business. They are in something that in England is called, what's it called? Administration, which to us in the U.S. is like Chapter 11 bankruptcy. As cool as their stuff is, they relied almost entirely on newsstand distribution, okay? So that's all well and good, but the pandemic comes along and it just tanked their business model. They tried to pivot quickly to, a more of an online direct-to-consumer model, but it was just too little too late, and yeah. So they took a huge hit. In 2020 alone, they lost something like 10 million pounds. So I think that they do produce a really nice product, but they are in administration, so it seems unlikely at this point that they can get out of that. I think it's more likely that someone will buy up their assets at a certain point. They got in over their head, Yeah, I have several Eaglemoss Star Trek ships. That is, they're really good quality. I think they're really good quality, but yeah, it seems like that's it for Eaglemoss. They've been around since the 1970s, so they're not like a new company or anything like that. They've been doing this stuff forever, and this is why companies go away: is they don't change fast enough. Like they should have known that they needed a direct-to-consumer channel that was like more reliable, and they didn't have that set up in time. So that's how you get into problems like this. You've got to anticipate that kind of stuff. So anyway, it is sad though. I had no idea they did more than ship models. Yeah. I think they've done all sorts of vehicles, but like the thing I know them best for is like the figures. I think I've got a handful of like the Buffy statues. And they're little, but like really well detailed and well painted, and a lot of the Marvel ones. The Marvel ones are so cool. Oh, I really like those. Just got here. What's the current topic? Well, Eric, I was just wrapping up some news on Eaglemoss Publishing going out of business, and I'm about to move on to the next piece of news. So, let's do that in just a sec here. Just having some fun with some big long lines. How dare I have fun, right? I tried to go to a Ren Faire this past weekend. And I've gone once or twice in the past. It's just sort of, I think, a fun thing to, like, people watch, get a turkey leg or a pickle, watch some jousting. I think that stuff's really fun. I've never dressed up or anything, but I admire like the costumes and stuff. I think a Ren Faire is a really cool, fun thing. So I went, and my wife and I were stuck in traffic to get there. Like, it was less than 7 miles. It took like about 2.5 hours to go the 7 miles. Just stop and go traffic the entire way. And then when we finally arrived there, the parking was clearly like full with a line just to walk in that was like about a mile long. And we just said, no, not worth it. And I got home and I found out they massively oversold. And if you're here in Washington, it is so dry right now. We haven't had like rain at all in forever. And if a fire had started like anywhere where all these people were like standing, because it's like in a field, it's like in an open farm field that's not being used, oh my god, everybody would have been trapped. There would have been nowhere to escape to. I saw like fire trucks trying to get by the traffic we were in, and it took them like 30 minutes to get like, just a quarter mile. It was crazy. I've never gone to a Ren Faire as Pace Pop Pete. This is in Washington State. I don't know what happened this year. They've always been able to do this with, it's not that big a deal to get in. And I went and like read the reviews on the site, and it said like the people that even got in, it took everybody hours to get in, and then once you got in, everything was shoulder to shoulder, so you couldn't enjoy anything. So they just massively oversold this outdoor event. I was really disappointed that I didn't get, because the weekend before that was my birthday, and I decided to work, and then I was like, oh, well, why did I work? I should have done something fun. I know, I'll do something relaxing the following weekend, and that was my big idea, and I didn't get to do it. So all I've been doing lately is just working. I'm sure that we all have times like that, so I'm not trying to just totally whine, just talking about what kind of stuff has been going on. I think Eaglemoss made superhero chess sets. I've always wanted to go to a Ren Faire. Looks like a fun time. Yeah, I didn't go to one until I moved out here. I've only been to it like maybe 3 different times. It's fun. It's a little like a convention, but you get to do stuff like axe throwing and listen to people play like, on old-fashioned instruments. I really do like the live jousting. That, like, it's a stunt show, basically, but just to see people, like, riding on horses and getting knocked off like horses going, like, full throttle is pretty exciting, especially with them in armor and stuff. It's really cool. It's really cool. Something I've enjoyed in the past. Not this year. Wasn't to be. Was not meant to be. Anyone here read What If Miles Was Thor? I talked about it on the news a couple weeks ago. I read some panels, but yeah. Do I find sitting in traffic relaxing? No, I find it frustrating. Although I was at least with my wife, so like we got to just talk and joke around and listen to music that we liked and stuff. So it wasn't bad in that regard. It was like, we got some time together. We're both usually working a lot, so that part was not too bad, actually. I don't totally hate that I did this. I really wanted to go to the event. I never went to King Richard's Fair. I don't know what King Richard's Fair is. I don't know what that is. What is King Richard's Fair, Genie? Is that a Ren Faire that they have back in Massachusetts? I don't know. I don't know. What are we even talking about at this point? I was going to move on to a piece of news. You guys like that news stuff? I've got plenty of it. King Richard's Fair is a Ren Faire in Massachusetts. Oh, no. Never been. The Renaissance Fair near D.C. is really good. You probably went when you lived there. No, I didn't, actually. I guess I just didn't know about it. I wish I could, it seems fun. I tried dating a chick who worked professionally at a Ren Faire. Wow. Okay. Yeah, some people seem to be really into it. There was a lot of costumes and stuff, but I respect that. I can see the fun in all that. I attend Ren Faire as ye old fart. Not quite Ren Faire, but my sister took my mom to a Bridgerton experience for her birthday. Sounded pretty fun. That's cool. That's cool. Did I miss the Hulk film rights news, or are you saving that? I haven't talked about that yet. Is that what I've got next? Hold on. Where's my Hulk news? My Hulk news is in a few items down. So I'll talk about the Hulk. I've got some interesting things to talk about that. We went to the Maryland Ren Faire when my band played. Chrissy, you're right, but I didn't do any of the events. I just watched you play. You're right that was at the Ren Faire, but I didn't do anything there. I forgot about that. Yeah, my wife plays the violin, and when I met her in D.C., she was in a band. And you're right, you did play at a Ren Faire once. I just didn't do anything other than watch you and your band. But you're right. All right, so what do I got for news? We talked about Eaglemoss. Oh, Grendel. Obviously, I made a huge episode about Grendel, and Grendel is being adapted into a live-action 8-episode series on Netflix. But we haven't heard about that in about a year. They're filming it. Well, one of the actors spoke with Screen Rant about it. So I've just got a quote from him, and I thought that was kind of cool, because Grendel is cool, and Hunter Rose, that first Grendel story, is arguably the coolest, or like the most iconic. So the actor is a guy named Julian Black Antelope, and as you can probably intuit from that name, he's native, and that makes sense because he's playing Argent. And in the Grendel comics, Argent is a sort of like a werewolf, but he was a Native American back, in something like either the 16 or 1700s that got a curse placed upon him. So he looks bestial, but he's actually got the mind and intelligence and compassion of a person, which is kind of ironic because the main character, Hunter Rose, is human, and he looks dashing, and he's perfect at everything because he's super smart and athletic naturally. He's just super gifted in that regard, but he's actually a criminal. Anyway, so Julian Black Antelope is playing Argent, and he told Screen Rant this. He says, I don't want to say too much about this right now, but I can say if you're a Grendel comic fan out there and you're familiar with the comic, you will not be disappointed in the series at all. And if you are not a Grendel fan, and this is a first-time thing for you, I guarantee you that if you watch it, you will not be disappointed at all. It's got everything. I feel very blessed to be part of this project. And I know that that's their job to talk up stuff like that, but it still excited me just to know that this is in development, because Grendel's a very cool indie comic. Very, very cool. And it's kind of awesome that a bunch of people are about to discover Grendel for the first time when this comes out. That's always a cool thing. Hell yeah on Grendel. Hey, I'm here. What did I miss? Mostly some comic reviews, Mandela, and some discussion of some companies like Valiant and Eaglemoss having some tough times. But yeah, your episode got me really interested in Grendel. My local comic shop has the first big collected edition. I've been considering getting it. I think you'll like it. It's really unique. It's really unique. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know exactly when that's coming out. That part wasn't in, like, you know, the news that I was reading, but hopefully, if he's saying that, you know, he said that they've filmed a lot of it, so all I can say is hopefully pretty soon that's going to be released, and that will be awesome. Well, you think that that's all the news I've got? No. Folks, no. I've got lots more. I do have a lot more, actually. This past weekend in Boston, they had the Fan Expo, the Boston Fan Expo. One of those Fan Expos, like, you know, Comic-Con that goes to, like, different places, and their big thing is mostly just that they get a lot of actors and comic artists. That's their whole deal, man. That's their whole deal. Frank Miller was there, and he gave some updates because he's got Frank Miller Publications with some new comics coming out. Yeah, more news, more! Valiant, you mean Vertigo? No, I got it right this time. Haha. I dare Disney to add a live-action Razorback. Yeah, well, Razorback could show up in She-Hulk, actually, so you never know. So, Frank Miller had a panel at Fan Expo, and he dropped quite a bit of news about some of his upcoming comics through his company. So, let's see. First of all, we knew he was going to do 2 Sin City comics. He showed the cover for one of them, which is set in the modern day. It had Gale on the cover, and that's drawn by Milo Manara. So, pretty famous, you know, European artist illustrating that book. Cool. But we also knew that he was going to do one that was going to be a what do you call it? A Western, basically. But we didn't know anything else. Well, it's set in 1858, and it's going to be called Sin City Blood and Dust. Cool. I'm down. And I guess some people at the convention got to see, like, a little bit of preview art. I don't have anything like that to share here, unfortunately. But I'm looking forward to it. I've liked a lot of Sin City in the past. It's been some of the sort of goofier but fun stuff that Frank Miller has created. And there was some more stuff beyond that. Just found out you had a second channel. Well, thanks for joining, Junkacino, right? Started reading my new Born Again trade paperback. Oh, very nice. Born Again, great comic. Apparently, the attendees at the convention, he handed out an ash can for all of them. So, you know, like, just sort of limited print run, just to sort of prove that the idea is out there, not necessarily like an official, nice, polished version. But an ash can came out, and by the way, this ash can is going to come to a lot of comic book stores this Wednesday. So if you are a Frank Miller fan, you might want to ask your comic store ahead of time to put one of these aside for you. But this book had 2 stories in it. One were excerpts of Ronin Book 2, which Miller is writing and artist Philip Tan is drawing. He's a talented artist, so that's cool. And then the other one is written by Dan Didio. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. And an artist named Danilo Beyruth, and that's called Ancient Enemies. So the Ancient Enemies thing is like sort of a prequel to what's coming, and the Ronin Book 2 sort of recaps what happened in Ronin Book 1 for those that haven't read it somehow. Hopefully you've read Ronin. That's definitely... Actually, that's an underrated Frank Miller comic. I like it a lot. Hopefully you've read it. I think it's one of his better ones. But not everybody knows it, I guess. I shouldn't take that for granted. I shouldn't take it as gospel that everybody knows it. Let's see. I thought Dan Didio vanished from comics. Yeah, I don't know. No, he didn't. Oh, and they also showed a preview of a book called Pandora with art by Emma Kubert. So I think that's third generation Kubert working in comics, by the way. And that's like a dark fairy tale. So anyway, but if you're curious, that ash can, apparently they're releasing some copies to comic book stores. So if you are a fan of Frank Miller, I'm just giving you guys the heads up because that's going to come out this Wednesday, apparently. And, you know, no matter what you think of him, those will go fast. There's just no way they won't. Pandora. Yeah, I know, Genie. I know. I just finished the Asadora manga on your recommendation. Ah, so glad that you gave that a shot, Tony. I don't think you'll be disappointed by anything by Master Naoki Urasawa. Just one of the best living comics creators out there, no question. Thanks for giving something I recommended a shot. I really appreciate that. You know? All I want to do is sort of spread the word of interesting, cool comics. Let's move on to some more news. That was 6 items, by the way, folks, but guess what? I've got at least 5 more. At least! Who out there likes the musical band The Gorillaz? Who likes the music of The Gorillaz? Who out there likes the animation? Who likes Tank Girl? What's the common denominator here? Jamie Hewlett. Such a cool artist. Such a cool artist. British artist Jamie Hewlett co-created Tank Girl. He's one of the creators of The Gorillaz. Really interesting artist. Does a lot of sort of more indie underground type stuff, right? That's what he's... Yeah, he doesn't stick with anything for too long. But he's really cool. So, he's got a new book coming out. It's an art book. But it's an art book with a bunch of comics that you probably haven't seen. Maybe some of you, if you're a super fan, have. But probably a lot of you haven't. Jamie Hewlett has... The book is called Fu Action Silver Jubilee by publisher Z2 Comics. They do a lot of stuff with musicians, actually. But anyway, so Fu Comics was sort of a funny action comic that Jamie Hewlett did in a magazine in the 90s. It was called Face Magazine, and he did a bunch of comic strips. It was about like this gay martial artist that's just a badass. And anyway, so that stuff has never really been collected anywhere, but it's going to be collected in this new art book, along with like an oral history about the animation that they did based on it, and a bunch of other Jamie Hewlett art. And if you don't know Jamie Hewlett art, then I sort of envy you, because now you can discover it for the first time. Jamie Hewlett art is very, very, very cool. Very original. Just awesome, awesome stuff. I don't even know exactly what to compare it to. The closest thing I can compare it to, I don't know if he's even still in the chat room. The closest thing would be somebody along the lines of like a Jim Mahfood. Just really wild, innovative ideas. Cool. He's got a really clean, flowing art style. It's really amazing stuff. I love his work. I love Jamie Hewlett's work. And so I'm pretty excited about this upcoming art book. I thought at least some of you out there maybe have read some Tank Girl or like Gorillas or know about Jamie Hewlett's stuff and so would want to know about this, because I think he's just really, really cool. I wish there was more Jamie Hewlett art out there. There's just not enough. But at least we'll get to see some. I've never seen the Fu Action stuff. I've heard about it, but I've never actually seen it. So I'm excited to see some new Jamie Hewlett art. That's a huge compliment. Thanks, man. Jamie is one of my absolute faves, says Jim. I don't think you guys are the same, but I feel like I saw that he's got to be an influence. You know, he's just got so much energy to his artwork and so much detail too. And it has like sort of a not necessarily punk, but like a little bit punk aesthetic. I mean, in the sense that it's just sort of like so independent and unique. I really like Jamie Hewlett a lot. I'm a huge art book collector. That is exciting news. That's great, Junkachino. Yeah. That's great. Wish I could have seen his Monkey King play that Jamie did the art for. Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, just something new, different. Get to see some comics that maybe you hadn't seen before, so I thought I had to at least mention that. Again, it's going to be called... Oh, and when I say Fu Action, it's spelled Phoo. Fu Action, Silver Jubilee, very British, and it's coming out through Z2 Comics this fall, okay? So, yeah. I remember in an interview he cited Peanuts Comics as one of his influences. That's interesting. If you're talking about Jamie Hewlett, I think I could sort of see that in a way. Anyway, yeah. I wish there was more Tank Girl out there for us all to enjoy. More Jamie Hewlett Tank Girl specifically, because there is Tank Girl by other people, and that's fine, but I feel like the best is Jamie's. But yeah, like, how can you not love, like, you know, the music videos for, like, Gorillas and stuff like that? It's just so cool. So cool. Andrew Jefferson with a super chat. Which country has a comic scene that you feel is underrated? Are there any that you haven't explored that you would like to? Cool question. Cool question. What country has a comic scene that's underrated? Probably Argentina. I think that Argentina produces quite a few comic book artists and does do some of their comics themselves, quite a few, that I don't think here in North America we always get to hear about. I don't think we get to hear about it as much. We get to see some of those artists work for, you know, Marvel and DC and stuff, but we don't always get to see their original comics. Like, for instance, Eduardo Risso. A lot of us might know him from 100 Bullets, but we might not have read his comic from South America, The Little Vampire, right? I think I'm remembering the title of that right. It's been over a decade since I read it. So that's sort of an example of a country that I think is a little underrated. A little. Only when you compare it to the US, the UK, you know, France, and what do you call it? Japan, of course. Even South Korea these days. Is there a country that I haven't explored that I would like to? Quite a few. I would love to explore South Korea a little bit more because their webcomics are just becoming very, very popular with younger readers, so I would like to understand that more than I do now. What else? I'd be very curious to see what the comics are like in a country that I'm not even sure if they make them or not, but like, for instance, Russia is so big, they must make some comics. I'm sure they import comics, but they must make some of their own. But I've never seen a a Russian comic, right? So that would be interesting. Yeah. And people are mentioning all sorts of fantastic countries that have produced amazing talent. You're right. Taiwan, Brazil, Italy, Croatia. I could list a lot of countries that have produced some brilliant, brilliant creators. I guess I'm just sort of thinking about it because I'm currently reading a bunch of Hugo Pratt stuff. And that's an Italian guy that like lived a lot of his life in Argentina. So I'm thinking about that country a little bit more right now. But yeah, I've been reading a bunch of Hugo Pratt lately. Not enough people know how cool he was. Didn't they have that Russian superhero movie with a bear? Well, they had that superhero movie, but I don't know if that was actually based on a comic, for instance. I don't know. I just think that that would be interesting, to see from countries that we don't necessarily get to hear from as often. And, there's several African countries that, have more of an indie scene for self-publishing comics, and I respect that. They seem to really love comics in lots of different countries throughout Africa, but don't necessarily have a lot of their own big publishing apparatus. Take a minute to hit that like button for our boy Chris, Tropes Nation. Yeah, I think the movie you guys are talking about was called Guardian something. It was a Russian superhero movie. I follow a Russian comic book publisher on Instagram. The art is wild. Sucks I can't understand that darn thing. I don't know. I think that would be interesting. I don't know. I don't think I have any fans that have reached out that are or I don't know if I should even call people that watch my show fans, viewers from Russia, or maybe even near Russia. But I would be very curious to learn more about a country like that, their art scene. I just think they're so big, they must have some sort of comic book scene. They must, but maybe not. Hey, Chris, if given the opportunity, would you rather illustrate a comic, especially if given the time to complete a one-shot, or write a comic? Write a comic, Mark. Yeah, I think I feel a lot more confident in my writing skills than my art skills. And the big trick would just be getting the time to commit to finalizing a newer script. I would like to do that very much, yeah. We'll see. If I could ever carve out just a little more time for myself, I've got several sort of outlines of some comic ideas that I would really like to script. And if I could script it, then I could definitely hire somebody to illustrate it, and might even make sense to go the crowdfunding route these days, just because this channel does have a pretty amazing amount of support. I'm sure that it would be successful. Yeah, so that I'd rather write one than draw one. I love drawing, and I do it on the show because I want to improve, and I like drawing, but I don't necessarily think I draw. I don't draw fast, and I don't think that I quite have the skills to compete with people that are coming out with monthly comics. I don't know, maybe a cover or something, or a short story. I have some opportunities to do stuff like that, and we'll see if that leads to anything. Let's see. Have I covered Vittorio Giordano, Italian comic book creator, does historical drama things much like Berlin by Jason Lutz? I've read Berlin, but no, I don't know Vittorio Giordano. Giordino. Maybe Russia just takes Belarus and Ukrainian comics and claims it as their own. Yeah, probably. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's move on to some other news. Let's hope we don't see Paramount logos pop up in She-Hulk. Paramount logos? I don't get it. Oh, tell you what. Oh, hold on. Let me answer this super chat first. Mianian says, what are non-cape genres you'd like to see more? I love crime comics, and I think that the crime works really well, like, mystery and, like, just whodunit type crime fiction. I think horror has been getting a resurgence. There's a lot of good horror comics out there, so I'm glad to see that. Maybe a few more sci-fi titles. That would be cool. But overall, I do think over the last, 5 to 10 years, we have been seeing a few more genres explored than just superhero stuff, more than we did in, like, the 10 years before that. So, yeah. I've tried my best to get a webcomic out monthly, but I get ill at the end, and every time, so that makes me worry if I have what it takes to work on a monthly published series. Well, I don't know, Moritaka. You have to just... All you can do is try, right? All you can do is try and see what happens. And hopefully we learn from our mistakes and get better as we do this stuff. Good luck. I wish you all the success in the world. I wish all of you success if you're brave enough to try anything with comics. Okay. Oh, I get, yeah. So let's talk about the news that I have in the thumbnail and everything. Takes this with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I think some of this makes sense. We're going to talk about the Hulk. For those who may not know, the Hulk is sort of like on this weird area for Marvel in that they can make movies with the Hulk in them. Marvel Studios can, but they don't want to do a solo Hulk movie, and that's because it's the one character whose distribution rights are with somebody else. They're with Universal. Universal made like an Ang Lee Hulk movie years ago, and then when they decided to do, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios worked with Universal to release that one single solo Hulk movie. But since then, Hulk has only appeared as a, guest or supporting member of the rest of the movie. Thor, Avengers, She-Hulk. Because Universal has the rights to distribute a solo Hulk movie. But a Redditor recently found something really, really interesting in an old Paramount Pictures SEC filing. Those are public filings they have to make when you're a publicly traded company. And in it, it explained that Paramount had the rights to distribute a solo Hulk movie for 15 years for the movie that they made back in 2006. That deal, if everything here is right, would end this coming June. Because I think the movie, anyway, it would end this June for whatever it's worth. Okay? Universal would have no choice but to let go Rick, because Marvel hasn't produced a solo Hulk movie with them. And they only have the distribution rights. They don't have the rights to just make this on their own. This isn't like a Fox situation where they own the rights to make X-Men and Fantastic Four movies, or how Sony has the right to make Spider-Man movies. Universal just had exclusive distribution rights, but that is a lot of the pie in terms of the money. So, what would happen here is, as of next year, basically, Marvel could now make a solo Hulk movie, if this is all correct, and I think that it is. And it makes sense because I've been hearing rumors that Marvel wants to make a World War Hulk movie. On top of all that, there have been all these trailers for the upcoming She-Hulk TV show that's going to start this Thursday. One of those quick blink and you'll miss it shots looks like the alien Sakarans have a warship here on Earth. Is it at least possible that in that show, maybe Hulk gets abducted, goes back to Sakaar or something like that, or maybe some heroes set him up to get captured? I don't know exactly what, but like he would come back here angry. They've obviously basically done Planet Hulk with Thor Ragnarok. They basically did that. So it's a little out of order, but I think it's possible that they could be lining things up to do World War Hulk as a solo movie. That would be a pretty... I feel like that would be popular right now. If they did a solo Hulk movie like that. I think it would work. I don't know. The Hulk is definitely, like one of the Marvel's premier characters. Yeah. Meek's been the villain mastermind all along. It would be amazing if we got a real Hulk story and a bit more Hulk love in the MCU, but we also don't know anything about Hulk's time on Sakaar. Not really. But if you were going to do a Hulk movie, you'd want a rampaging Hulk, like that's what people would want. And I think that's what you definitely get with World War Hulk, and it seems like World War Hulk would be the kind of perfect movie for a solo Hulk movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because you can have 2 or 3 other big superheroes go up against him, but he's the star, and you introduce like a villain or something that they all team up against, because that's comics, superhero comics. But I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too hopeful, but you can go on Reddit. I don't have a link to it right now. I'll try to find the link and put it in the description later. It made a lot of sense to me. Like what I was reading. We'll see. But maybe we're about to get a Hulk solo movie made. Is that something you'd want at this point? Would you still be interested in, a solo Mark Ruffalo starring Hulk movie? Or are you like, no, the time for Hulk is past? Like, you're not interested. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. I would still be interested in a Hulk solo movie. I like Hulk quite a bit. Do you think Ang Lee's Hulk movie is underrated? I think it's pretty much rated exactly where it should be. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's fine. It's lower mid. It's not great. I don't think it's underrated. No. I don't. World War Hulk rumors are probably true. I'd love it. I really want Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. I'd be cool with that. Oh, you enjoy Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. Yep. U.S. Avengers had another Red Hulk. I think his name was General Maverick. Yep. There are 2 Red Hulks. That's true. And you're right. Like, we wouldn't really have... They'd either have to recast Thunderbolt Ross or have him as the Red Hulk, because the actor who played Thunderbolt Ross has died, and that's sad. But so you can't get like... I don't think that they'd recast at this point. I think that like it might make more sense to have Thunderbolt Ross show up as Red Hulk, and like somebody else voices him, but we just treat him as like he's the same guy. I don't know, folks. I don't know. Sure, finish Hulk's trilogy. Will they announce this movie at D23? That's an interesting point, Mandela. That's an interesting point. D23 is Disney's own convention that they have every year, and that's coming up, and they always will announce something big for Marvel, so they've probably been holding back on some of the news. They gave us a couple little hints during San Diego Comic-Con, but probably they'll like drop some more Marvel news on us at D23, and that's like within within a month or so. So if this is true, that might be where they'd announce it. That's a possibility. So just keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. Keep everything open. Keep every orifice open, okay? I want you to open every single orifice all at once. Open them. Ready? It's intense. Remember when CGI tech was at the point where every bad guy roided up looked like Hulk? It was a very boring trope. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It would be interesting to see what they do, because I am sure they won't reverse the progress of what Hulk having become smart. Well, I think that he could go away from being smart Hulk if he got angry enough. That's something Hulk's done in the comics, is he's gotten smart and he's gotten dumb again. It all depends how angry he is. Mianian with a super chat saying, I'd really pay to see Future Imperfect on screen. Great story. Maestro's a great villain. Might be a little tricky to adapt, but you know where I think Future Imperfect would be more likely to show up? What If? I could see them doing it as like 1 or 2 episodes of What If. I don't know if I'd see them doing it as a movie. I don't know. I'd definitely like to see more Hulk. Bring back Betty. Maybe finally add Rick Jones. Yeah, I mean, Rick Jones. That would be such a great character to have in the MCU. Sorry, Dark Daboki. I don't know exactly what you were even trying to say there, so I'm going to go ahead and hit show, but it sounds bad. Any news on the development of the Great Chicken Mystery sequel? Alexovich, I never promised such a thing. In case you missed it, like, I found a book I made when I was like, I don't know, like how old would I have been? Probably like 10, maybe 9. I made this book, and it's terrible, and I reviewed it on the show a few weeks ago. I will not be making a sequel. It's this does not deserve to be seen again. MCU Maestro would be wild. MCU Maestro would be awesome. If you were to make a comic book based on a public domain character, which one would you choose? Oh, wow. Who would I choose for a public domain character? Huh. Fun, challenging question. Let's see here. Possibly 7-Eleven. I feel like that was the public domain character that I've gotten like the most positive responses to reviewing. Yeah, possibly 7-Eleven. You like how I had it right at hand, Fernando? Well, here's the dark secret. This desk that I work at just has piles of the comics that I've reviewed over the last couple of weeks. They just pile up here right now. I haven't organized them at all. So I actually was about to show you, but I don't want to show you because it's ugly. It's just piles of comics. Thank you for telling us about 8 Billion Genies, says Nilax. I picked it up after hearing about it a few weeks ago on your show. It's great. Isn't it unique? I really like it too. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you very much for the super chat as well. Super appreciated. The Awesome Poultry Enigma. Ever read any Dark Horse Alien Predator comics? Yeah, I think I have the first one still. I think I have the very first Alien Predator comic. I think I have the very first Predator comic that Dark Horse did as well. Yeah, I've got 1 or 2 of the very early issues from like 89 or 90. Kind of hard to remember, but somewhere around there. You wouldn't mind seeing a live-action version of the leader. Here's the thing. I'm probably crazy for thinking of this. I'm basing it on nothing. I think that there's a chance that we could see the leader show up on the She-Hulk TV show. Because keep in mind, they had cast it. They had Samuel Stearns in the original Hulk movie. And he's never come back. But he did have an accident and have like some gamma stuff fall into an open head wound. So the leader is theoretically theoretically out there in the MCU. And I know it's crazy, but I feel like that they could definitely get that actor, Timothy Nelson? I can't remember the actor's name right now. I'm terrible at names. You guys kind of know that if you've been watching this show. But Tim Blake Nelson? Is that his name? They could get him. And I feel like there's a chance that they could use him. Matt Rubin says, does Rolk have to be Ross? There are more than one. No, it doesn't. I think that we were more talking about if they made a Hulk solo movie and you wanted to have General Ross, since that actor's no longer there, maybe you have had him already turn into the Red Hulk and just have sort of like a different person doing the voice, maybe. Leader could also be in Thunderbolts. Definitely. I think that they'll bring Leader in at some point. I think so. I've got more news, folks. Why did we pause? Tim Blake Nelson, bring him back. Yeah, I feel like he'd be good. I feel like he'd be good, actually, in that role, too. So, I say bring him back. Let's start that now. Hashtag bring Tim Nelson Blake back as the leader in the MCU. End hashtag. Yeah, that's a good hashtag. That one will take off. I feel good about that. What's the next news that I have? Here's some more sort of, let's see, who do you like better as Bruce Banner, Edward Norton or Mark Ruffalo? It's a little hard to make the comparison only because obviously Mark Ruffalo has had a lot more time to make the character his own than Edward Norton. But I think Edward Norton did a good job. I don't know that he got enough of an opportunity to really like show us his idea of Bruce Banner's personality. You know? So I think I would have to go with Mark Ruffalo. They're both very good actors. They really are. A Joe Fixit live action. Yeah, that would be cool. I'm all for something like that. I want to see Grey Hulk. I would love to see gangster Grey Hulk. That sounds really cool. I like Norton, but he is not coming back. No, he's definitely not. Yeah, he fought like for a lot more creative control than Marvel was comfortable giving. So anyway, let's move on to some news about IDW. IDW is somebody that's like I feel like had quite a bit of success in the last couple of years in comics, and continuing on that path, they have no less than 5 properties that are in active development to become like either movies or streaming TV shows, more likely streaming TV shows. Let me list the 5 that they have. 5. They announced this was in Variety this week, so that's like a Hollywood trade publication. One of them is a book that we've reviewed here on this show fairly recently. Dark Spaces Wildfire. That's by Scott Snyder and Hayden Sherman about like the female firefighters. They're actually prisoners that are working on like sort of like, you know, work release stuff as firefighters, which is a real program that California has. And they're fighting a wildfire and decide to take the opportunity to break into somebody's house and steal like a bunch of money and art and crypto and stuff. That you know, the fire will cover their tracks. So that's at a production company. There's The Delicacy. This is the second one. The Delicacy is by James Albon, and that's about like sort of a chef that finds a really rare fungi that he uses to cook, and it causes all sorts of weird problems. That's being set up at WBTV, that production house. The third one is called Rivers. That was by Dan Barry and David Gaffney about 3 weirdos that have a recurring dream. Anyway, that one's at HBO Max, so I feel like that one's... Actually, I was about to say that one's the most likely to hit, but now with like the latest news about like where HBO Max is with, you know, comic properties, who knows where that one stands actually. Tough to guess these days. There's two more, though. One's called Ballad for Sophie. That's by Philippe Melo and Juan Cavilla. Philippe Melo, if I'm not mistaken, I could be, but I'm pretty sure that that's a musician from Portugal. But anyway, they made a comic, and that's at a production company. That's about a journalist coaxing a reclusive musician to come back into the limelight. And finally, this one to me sort of sounded really cool. This is the final one. It's called Brutal Nature. That's by Luciana Saraceno and Ariel Olivetti. That's about a young man that like gets access to these masks, and when he puts them on, he can sort of get like either their powers or their bestial powers. And he's a Mayan that's trying to defend his people against Spanish conquistadors. Anyway, so that sounds pretty wild. That sounds cool to me. So 5 different IDW comics, all in like various stages of production at like various places, but they're all sort of attached to that I think Warner Brothers conglomerate, I think. Have you read any of those comics that I just listed? Has anyone out there read those? Delicacy is really good, says Dominic. Okay, thank you. People still talking about Hulk stuff, and that's fine. Hulk is popular. That's why they should do a solo movie. But has anybody read any of those comics that I was talking about? Rivers or Brutal Nature, Dark Spaces, Wildfires, Ballad for Sophie, or what was the last one? Oh, The Delicacy. I think the only way to really do Predator's invisibility well is by, like filling in the full background and sort of like drawing its warped nature, which I don't think I'll have time to do tonight, but that's the only way I can think to like really give that indication. Anyway, what are comics? Olivetti is Argentinian. Yep. Again, guy that a country that I mentioned I'd love to see more about. Never heard of them, says Stardust Memory. Heister says, have not, but they sound very cool. The only one I can speak to is the Scott Snyder book, Dark Places Wildfire, and I really like that. Yeah, this is sort of based on Prey, exactly. Just to have Naru jumping down onto the Predator from that movie. Trying to ambush him. I don't think she didn't really do that in the movie or anything, but I'm just sort of coming up with, I don't know, a cut scene, right? Like something that could have happened. The Hulk cartoon had a lot of characters from the comics. Okay. How excited am I to watch the Better Call Saul finale? Very excited, but I haven't watched any of this half. I was waiting until the final one came out so I could binge the final half of the final season. I've got some more news. Last week we talked about how new Warner Brothers Discovery president David Zaslav was likely canceling a lot of the existing DC Comics movies and TV shows. We know that he was canceling Batgirl. That was the big news last time. And there was a rumor that he was also canceling stuff like Strange Adventures, which was going to be an anthology show at HBO Max, highlighting, lesser seen DC characters. But that was just a rumor from Kevin Smith last time we talked about it, but according to Variety, that's confirmed. Like, they are canceling Strange Adventures. That was going to be produced by Greg Berlanti. Now, Greg Berlanti is the guy who's pretty famous for producing all of the Arrowverse shows, okay? Well, now there's a rumor that even though his, some of his current projects are getting canceled, that he might be in line to inherit a new role at Warner Brothers. The rumor is David Zaslav wants to hire somebody very much like Kevin Feige, somebody like a producer that would oversee a coherent, connected DC movie, possibly TV, universe. If they were, there's a lot about Berlanti that makes sense. This isn't to say that like the Arrowverse all of a sudden becomes canon or anything. No, this would be like, he'd be overseeing new movie projects and stuff. But obviously he has the ability to coordinate several TV shows at once, which is part of the skill set you would absolutely need, and he's at least clearly familiar with a lot of these characters, like Flash and Green Arrow and Supergirl. They used some pretty deep pulls into comic book lore from time to time, so he's been exposed to a lot of this stuff. I don't know if he's the perfect choice or not, but it does make a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense that he could be in the running for it. You thought Alan Horn was already picked? I haven't heard that confirmed. I don't know. Maybe. Let's look that up real quick, just to see if there's something that's even more recent than what I was reading. I just want to be sure about this. No, I'm not seeing anything like that. Berlanti did good in TV, but was also involved in the Green Lantern movie. It's true. But he wasn't the guy that necessarily wrote it, and he shouldn't escape all the blame, but he also shouldn't get all the blame. Well, yes, he's involved. That was pretty bad. That's a good point. I don't know if he's the person I'd want either. But I could understand why it would make sense, and I do think that it would be a good thing overall for DC if they got a dedicated producer to oversee everything and add some real clarity and consistency in that sort of cinematic universe. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't know. A lot of people were involved in that movie. Lots of blame to go around. Probably too many, honestly. That's probably part of why it was so bad. Don't think Berlanti is a good choice. Okay? Dude can work, but only if they let him, and that's the danger with WB. Yep. You have to be... If they're going to install somebody, they have to have a lot of authority. I'd pick Berlanti over Johns. I would too. I'd definitely pick him over Jeff Johns. Those old clones. Berlanti can't compete against the MCU. Not saying if he can compete or not, but they do need somebody in that role. I think that I'm not going to give Kevin Feige all the credit for what the MCU has done, but I'll give him a lot, because how many other sort of shared universe ideas have we seen be attempted that have just fallen apart because they don't have that kind of a role? I think that, Marvel has an overall layer of quality to their movies. They're not all great. I don't think really any of them are necessarily terrible, in my opinion. I know some people don't like things like, Eternals, or they might just be like, I didn't like Iron Man 3 or something. Lots of people have lots of opinions. But I think overall they really do have a consistent level of quality. I really do. I'm not saying that that's super high. It's not Citizen Kane, but I do think that they have a pretty consistent layer of quality, and I think that that's because they've got one guy who's in charge of it all. That's what I think. Let's say Feige respects their characters. That's the key. For the most part, they do. Yeah, exactly. Mandela Butterfly mentions Dark Universe. That seemed like more or less a no-brainer to put together all the Universal horror characters and they couldn't even get past one single movie, starring Tom Cruise, no less. Like, you know, like, how do you let that fall apart that easily? Like, I'm not saying it was even the best idea, but, you know, if you're going to go for it, that seems like a no-brainer. You've got, like, a lot of characters that people know. It shouldn't have been that hard. It shouldn't have been that hard to do. The biggest thing that Marvel has going for it is that they always plan ahead some. And so, like, even if they, like, have a misstep, they can usually do a small amount to course correct themselves. That's the biggest thing that they... And they were never in that rush. They were going for Avengers, but they took a few years to get there. And that patience paid off for everything else, because now everything else can build on that. You know? It's a lot. I liked most of the Friday the 13th movies. You know what? I think, in a way, I like them all, even though some are garbage. They're all sort of garbage, but some are really garbage. I kind of like the Friday the 13th movies. I don't know why that came up, but I like them. There's more news. We're almost at the end of the show, but I've got more news. I love Mike Mignola's art. I really do. And I like Hellboy. I like that universe quite a bit. Well, there's going to be a little bit more expansion in the Hellboy comic book universe stuff. To start with, there's some trade paperbacks and collections that are coming out this fall. There's going to be, like, I think, an Omnibus 5 for BPRD. That's the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. There's going to be a trade paperback collecting the British Paranormal Society. That's about a team of paranormal investigators before there was ever a BPRD, so that's set in the past. And then they've got a new book coming out with Frankenstein in it. That's cool. It's called Frankenstein New World, and it's all about the famous creature, you know, Frankenstein's monster, but set in, like, this post-apocalyptic world where, like, humanity, what's left of it, is all, like, living underground. And, like, one girl goes to find this, like, you know, what they call the Oracle, and it turns out to be, like, Frankenstein's monster, and the beast, I guess, will, like, help them come back to the outside world, or the real world. I'm curious where it goes. Moon Knight was introduced in an issue of Werewolf by Night. Yes, he was. I was wondering if you've read the Fight Club comics. No, I never read those, actually. I know what you're talking about, because I think that... Didn't they usually have covers by somebody like David Mack? Like, painted covers? I don't know if that's exactly who did them, but, like... I always saw those, and I liked the Fight Club movie, but no, I never picked up the comics. So did that, like, explore the world on a bigger scale? I guess I just couldn't imagine where it would go from there, so I never quite gave it a try. Some folks talking about, like, how there's a Werewolf by Night Halloween special coming to Disney Plus this year. Yep, that could be fun. And I bet we see Moon Knight cameo in it. I bet we do. We'll see. If we do, and they sort of tie Moon Knight more to the supernatural world, then I could sort of see them potentially, like, you know, using either Werewolf by Night or Moon Knight in the upcoming Blade movie on some level. The Predator's bone mask was such a cool look. Yeah, at first I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why does he have, you know, such a simple, stripped-down look? You know, he didn't have as much technology and everything. And then I was like, oh, wait. It is like 300 or 400 years ago. While they've got, like, some of the technology, yeah, it's in the past for the Predators, too. So it's not like they've been stagnant. Like, he's got a little less technology. They probably don't have those advanced masks yet. There's lots of stuff that they seemingly didn't have yet. I like that. In retrospect, I guess I wish I'd drawn Naru here with, like, sort of more of a more sort of motion lines, just to imply that she's dropping onto the Predator's back. And if I was really drawing this, like if I was drawing, say, like a page or a cover or something, this would have had like a lot of trees here, and I would have like sort of had them like warp here, because I'm having like the Predator sort of come out of his invisibility here while she's dropping on it. So those are some things that I always look at this stuff and I go, what could I have done better? You know, like that's a part of why I'm drawing it each week. It's not to show off, it's to learn. This is my downtime. If I was just talking to the camera, that's not too exciting. So this is like the visual element. Anyway, so is these the original Predator's great-grandfather? Maybe. They probably will do Midnight Suns after they introduce Blade. That's a possibility. That's a definite possibility. The bone mask is a callback to Predators. It's the dog creatures in that movie. Yeah, I like that, by the way. I recognize that, because Predators, I think, is the third best Predator movie. Yeah, they've got the bone mask from, like, those dog creatures on like, one of their planets, and then, like, the pistol, which is a reference to Predator 2. So I like that there were a few very small callbacks to existing Predator lore, but like it wasn't too much, you know. It was none of it was like stuff you needed to know, but it was stuff that you go, oh, okay, it's still set in that world. I like that. I like that a lot. How would you rank the Predator movies you've seen? Oh, okay. Best is the original Predator. It's got the originality going for it, and Schwarzenegger is like, you know, really, really cool in it. It's a good mix of action, horror, and sci-fi. Really like that one. That's my favorite. Prey is a pretty close second. Prey is what I put in number 2, because it's way stripped down, but it does give like a slightly new angle on everything, and it's about something, you know, like there's about both like character drama, and there's sort of like, you know, a meta-textual narrative about manifest destiny. Just like the first one, like that was a pretty political movie too. I mean, it has the CIA putting our American soldiers into South American politics where they don't belong. That was very of the time in the 80s. Like that was definitely something that we were sneaking around doing. So anyway, Predator 1, Prey, then Predators. Not perfect, but still really fun, cool ideas, good fights, good death scenes, and pretty good evolution of like the mythology, stuff like that. For number 4, 4 and 5 are like really close for me. Personally, I think I would personally put Alien vs. Predator 1 there. I think it's a fun movie. It's a little dumb. It's actually quite a bit dumb. But I do think it's a fun movie. So I would put that as my 4th one, followed very closely by Predator 2, which isn't as good as the original, but Danny Glover's really good in it, and there's some great shots of like the Predator in that movie. That was really cool. Jim Moffood asks my thoughts on Kool-Aid Man versus Predator crossover. I think we should do it. And then, let's see, the last 2 movies, I guess, will be, I'll say The Predator, the one from like 2 or 3 years ago, is slightly better than Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Only because Alien vs. Predator Requiem, good luck even seeing that while you're watching it. It is so dark. The color correction on that movie is the worst I've seen in my life. It is so physically dark. You can't see anything that's going around. So anyway, who's the chick? This is Naru from the new movie Predator. Or at least it's supposed to be. I don't know if I got it right, but tried. But Jim, you're talking to a guy that did make an episode about Kool-Aid Man. And I think that this is something that makes sense. Marvel did once have the rights to do the Kool-Aid Man comics. They don't now, but I bet that they'd be willing to get them again if you and I team up to say, hey, Marvel, Kool-Aid Man versus Predator equals $, Poor Predator 2. Predator 2 is fun. It's good. I like it. So I like 5 of the 7 Predator movies. I like 5 of them. It's just a matter of what order I like them in. What was the you shouldn't drink and bake move? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Predator 1 is about having Arnold against the creature. Basically, Earth monster versus space monster. Sort of. It's also about, it's about a bunch of things, but yeah. Yeah, we got to team up. How do you rip the skull out of someone that is just glass and sugar water? Well, Andrew, I'm not just going to tell you. You're going to have to buy the comic to find out. Or am I going to subvert that and have Kool-Aid Man rip the Youch's skull out? And Kool-Aid Man will just go, oh yeah! And he'll get hit by lightning while standing on a Los Angeles building at night. And he'll just revel in the power. Oh yeah! He's going to hold the Predator's skull up above his head. That's what's going to happen in mine. Kool-Aid Man versus Macho Man Randy Savage. They're just going to keep going, oh yeah! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Very similar. Very similar. But a little different. Actually, it might sound a little more like this. Kool-Aid Man bursts through wall. Oh yeah! Macho Man Randy Savage. What do you think of that? That might be more accurate because one of them is dead. Kool-Aid Man and Jello Man would team up to beat Predator. Jello Man? I don't know Jello Man. I don't know Jello Man. There's a better ratio of good Predator movies than Alien films. I know! And it's like kind of funny because like Alien started out stronger. Alien and Aliens are pretty great. And then Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection are sort of like interesting experiments. And then there's like 2 movies where Ridley Scott comes back. And it's like you'd think any of those should have worked, but none of them really do. So it's sort of like... Yeah, and then I guess you could throw in the Alien versus Predators, but those are going to be the same for either side. Whereas, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, like Alien only has like 2 good movies. Predator has like 3 good movies and 2 fun ones. Jussie Smollett was in Alien Covenant. I barely even remember that. Macho Man Randy Savage had a cameo in Kentucky Fried Movie. Did he? The only role I remember Randy Savage in from the movies was Bonesaw is ready. Spider-Man 1. Sam Raimi. Jello Man is a fantastic comic. You should give it a look. Is it real? I really have not heard of Jello Man. I don't think. I always forget Covenant exists. Lucky you, Drew. Lucky you. You got to tell us your secret sometime and how you forget that like a bad movie exists. Was Covenant the second one? I can't even remember. Yeah, it was Prometheus and then Covenant. I'd say Covenant might have been a little better than Prometheus, but that's like saying like what's better, like, a pile of shit or a pile of diarrhea. Did I really arrive at the end of the stream, says Tyler. You did, but it'll be archived and you can watch it later, and I'll always be back next week. That's a nice outfit. Did your boyfriend buy it for you? Yeah, that line from Spider-Man is dated a little. That I don't think that they would put that in a movie now. Have you seen that fan film where a paladin fights the Predator? No. The only fan film I saw with Predator was remember that one Batman fan film where he's beating up the Joker in an alley, and the Joker was played by the guy that was like Boner on Growing Pains. By the way, we won't go any more about that actor because he's got a sad ending. I think it was like the son of Chekhov from Star Trek. Sad ending. Anyway, so Batman's beating up the Predator. No, he's beating up the Joker, and then the Predator shows up. Or is it the alien first? But anyway, they're all in it. It's the craziest fan film. It was really popular on the convention circuit for a while, but it was the days before YouTube, so yeah. Commando, Raw Deal, Predator, Running Man. Man, yeah, like Schwarzenegger, that was his prime, man. That was when he became a star, and of those, I like Predator the most and Commando the next most, but they're all good. They're all good. Like, basically, he did Conan, and then almost everything else he did after that was pretty good for quite a long time, into the 90s, into the late 90s. I would say, well, he did Conan the Destroyer right after Conan. That was pretty bad. But Conan was good, and then he did like a bunch of really cool action movies. Man, Schwarzenegger was really cool in his prime. Really cool. You did not like Predator, says Christopher Davis? Okay. I mean, who couldn't like Commando? Let off some steam, Bennett. That's a great line. He has great lines in all of those movies, but Commando probably has the most one-liners for a Schwarzenegger movie. Probably Commando has the most. Jingle All the Way is my favorite because they don't explain why Arnold is just an average suburban father. Well, that was just sort of something you had to get by in all of the movies. Like, even like the early ones, you know, like Commando. That was a really early one. And his name is like John Matrix, and he's like an American soldier with like an American daughter, and you just don't question why he sounds like, you know, Austrian. You just don't question it. I don't know. We all overlooked all of it, like for all of his movies for a while. Dutch? Yeah, like in Predator, he's Dutch. Why would the Terminator need to speak like that? Like, none of it makes sense. Yeah, he played a Russian cop in Raw Deal. So, like, that one, you're just like, okay, he's got an accent. I don't know. Doesn't... Judge Dredd versus Aliens in Incubus was had very cool Henry Flint art. Yeah. I'll have to leave now. Everyone have a good one. Fernando, we're about to end the show. Thank you very much for stopping by. It's been... I like talking about 80s stuff that I grew up with. So, like, that's fun to talk about Schwarzenegger stuff. Tsuki Condor says, hey, Chris, out of... Curious? Have you heard of or read a comic called Omaha the Cat Dancer? Yeah, furry comic started in 1978 by Reed Waller and Kate Worley that led to the creation of the Comic Defense Fund. I have read some of it, just because it does hold an important place in comics history. You know, it's meant to sort of be erotic, and I don't find furry stuff at all erotic, so I did not find that comic erotic. But they did have some interesting soap opera stuff, and the art was honestly pretty strong. For an indie comic, that was pretty strong. The most interesting stuff about it is its place in history for me. But, yeah, it's an interesting book. I didn't read all of it. I read some of it, and I've read about the history around it. Yeah. Remember when I said I'd kill you last? That's right, you did. I lied. Yep, Alyssa Milano played Arnold's daughter in Commando. I totally remember that. I've always watched your streams on Tuesdays, but loved being here for the live stream. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. That's really, really kind of you. I love having people here to talk comics with. And out of the comics, again, that like we read this week, my pick of the week would be 8 Billion Genies. And then after that, like two that I would say are interesting if you haven't read them yet would be like Predator's interesting, Punisher's really good. Punisher's really good. That's probably my second favorite. The rest is sort of mid to, honestly, like, I want to like Judgment Day because I respect Kieran Gillen. Kieran Gillen's written some great stuff. This one I'm not too into. But let me mention just before I close out, the coloring in this by Marte Gracia. One of the best colorists working these days. Now, it has to be... Marte Gracia has to be paired with the right artist, because he's got a very painterly style. Very painterly. And that can muddy up the work for some artists that draw super, like, detailed stuff. But I don't think that any of this looks muddy. I think it's very clean, very clear. This is, like, so well rendered. I don't know how Marte Gracia produces, like, a monthly book. honestly, because like look at how many gradients are used and how big the color palettes are. I don't understand it, but I sincerely love Gracia's coloring. I really do. Look at this. There's like different things happening thematically. So there's one dominant color for each thing. You know, green, yellow, sort of like purple, like different shade, like indigo. That's impressive choices. I don't talk about colorists enough, but for what it's worth, this is there's a couple different types of coloring. You know, there's more of flat coloring, and there's like super rendered, like lots of effects. But you have to be really, really good at probably like painting and drawing for real to do this many effects. And I think that Gracia is one of the best out there. I really do. Really impressive work. Really impressive. Love it. So I'll close on that. I think that that's a positive note to close out on. There's my little pin-up for the day. And again, if you want to send anything for me to potentially review, or if you made your own comic, like I'll at least mention it here on the live show, okay? So I think that that could be cool. But I'm going to take off. This is a great show. Thank you all for being here. Working on my next Comic Tropes episode. And if you haven't watched it, I did launch a new episode today on Comic Tropes about She-Hulk's history. Seems to be getting some really good traction. People seem to like it. If you haven't checked it out yet, consider it. But I'll be back soon. I love all of you. Take care of yourselves. You matter. And finally, keep reading comics. And now I awkwardly look for like the end stream buttons and stuff and make sure that I don't end it while I'm still talking. Take care, everybody.